Well, hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday and good morning. I never record this early in the morning, but we're getting Mike in the Midwest recorded because it's a busy couple of days here around this part of the world. So, didn't want to miss the show. So, episode 75 coming your way. Going to talk about some of the little things we're thankful for here in our home this year. And mostly thankful for your support of the Be Our Guest podcast. But we'll record the show and my voice is kind of in and out because it's 7:30 in the morning and just got out of bed. So we'll see how this goes. But thanks for being here and let's get on with episode 75 of Mike in the Midwest. Let's see how this one sounds. Episode 75 of Mike in the Midwest. Let's get this one recorded. Let's see what we got here. Adjust the level so I don't have to talk so loud because everybody else is still sleeping. Welcome to episode number 75 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast, just like you. If today's show sounds a little bit different, it's because I'm recording this one bright and early in the morning. It's about 7:30 on a Wednesday, November 25th, 2021. Yes, it is the day before Thanksgiving. Everyone else here in the house is still sleeping, so I'm trying not to wake up everybody as they are enjoying a little extra slumber as they are off school, both my daughter and my wife. And we have a busy day today, and of course, Thanksgiving Day tomorrow. So I had to get this one out there a bit early. We normally record these podcasts on Thursdays, but of course, tomorrow is Thanksgiving Day. We are having about 20 to 25 family members over. We host Thanksgiving, so couldn't really come down here and record during Thanksgiving. We'll have folks over and football and lots of food and fun and kids and all kinds of stuff. And I just pray every time the kids come over that they don't grab onto the podcast stuff, the microphones, the lights, the computer. I just when they're throwing the balls around, I don't care. I'm definitely have fun kind of guy here at the house when the kids come over, but I always pray that nothing gets broken. I'm kind of that person just in the computer area because I like to have my podcast stuff and ready to go when I need it. So we'll have a good time tomorrow with Thanksgiving. So I want to get this out here a bit early, and maybe you can take this on the road with you, and we'll be in your ear as you travel over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house to enjoy with your friends and family. And today's going to be not a very long show. I just wanted to reflect on what we talked about last week and kind of get you up to date with what's going on. In this corner of the world. That's what we do every week on Mike in the Midwest. It's a show about what's happening here in Missouri with kind of behind the scenes on the Be Our Guest podcast. And I have gotten a lot of questions here lately about why aren't you running? You haven't seen me post it on Instagram. You guys know I usually run every morning. And my goal is to be back to running by Monday. So I have a few more days that I'm planning to take off. But I should be back and hopefully back to running by Monday. I've had a couple of things that have kept me off the treadmill and away from the lake, the little pond, lake, whatever you want to call it here, our quarter-mile track around our little path around our lake that I run about 52 times each morning. First of all, my wife had a procedure, so I've been helping her kind of recover from a couple of things. And so I've been driving her. She can't drive right now, so I've been driving her places and helping her around the house with things. And it's been interesting. We spent 3 nights together. And this is what we're going to talk about here in the main part of the show. We spent 3 nights in a row after that. Excuse me. Sleeping, and I use sleeping in air quotes, in our recliners in our living room, and that's been interesting. So that makes it kind of tough to get up and run at 5:30 in the morning, which is not a big deal. Kept me away from running. Two things is that you guys know that I've been talking for a couple months that I've had this like stitch in my side, and who knows, it could be a kidney stone. I had that a while back, but maybe not. But the cherry on top of the cake, you know how they say when it rains it pours. You guys have probably heard that many times. So my wife had her procedure last week on Thursday. Well, a couple days before that, I was real nervous about that. All kinds of other stuff. I'm working at home. teacher. She's at school teaching, doing her thing. And I'm upstairs grabbing something from upstairs, and my office is downstairs, the podcast studio, and my big computer where I do my work for the travel agencies downstairs. So I'm upstairs grabbing something. I'm going back downstairs to get back to work. I think I was grabbing a Coke Zero actually out of the fridge upstairs, and heading downstairs. And I've done this, a million times. And Riley, of course, the super dog, is here with me. She keeps me company when it's just us, here getting the job done. I tell Pam and Mallory that, when it gets busy, I let Riley pull out her laptop, and she also helps me with quotes. She's a Labrador, she's a golden doodle, and I've taught her how to type. I've taught her how to do simple quotes. She can do values and sometimes a moderate. Don't let her do deluxe quotes yet, but she's getting pretty good at it. Just kidding. But yeah, so she's here with me all the time to keep me company. But for some reason, and I don't know why, on that Monday, it was either Monday or Tuesday. I can't put my finger on what day actually it was. This again, you'll hear why. She cut me off going down the basement steps, and she's about a 40 or 50 pound dog. She was all excited. She cut me off, and I fell down the basement steps. And again, this was just the cherry on top of the cake, because I was already having this pain in my side that was like, it would be fine. It would go away. It'd be totally gone. And then it would just like sneak up on me when I was running or when I wasn't running. It actually was more prevalent when I was not running, like when I was just sitting around the house. So I fall down the stairs. Again, remember, I'm not 21 anymore. I might pretend like I'm 21. I act like I'm 21 still, but I'm not. I'll be 48 on Saturday. Um, and I hit my wrist real hard, and the thing is, I used to be a speed skater. I used to travel the country. I speed skated. I was ranked really high in the mid 90s. I went to nationals. I competed with Stacy. Remember Stacy from Must Do Disney? She was a national champion roller skater. I was as well, but I was in speed skating. She was artistic skating. We were at the same time too, just about too. But I know that when you go down from a fall because of speed skating, you do not put your wrist down. Like that's the thing. You just absorb the fall. You just take it. Well, I hadn't fallen. I haven't, God bless it, I haven't fallen in a while. But I put my wrist down, jammed my wrist, which is kind of sore, but I didn't break it or anything. So I'm lucky there. But the one thing I hit was the back of my head on the stairs. And so I hit my head so hard that I ended up getting a nosebleed later that day. It was wonderful, like 2 or 3 hours later. So I'm pretty sure that for the last week, I've had a concussion. I'm almost positive because I've had a couple. I used to play a lot of hockey, and I got one speed skating years ago pretty badly. So I'm going to the doctor today because I've had a headache ever since. And I get migraines anyway, but I've had a headache since. So I got to go to the doctor this afternoon for that. So that's why I'm down here early recording, because that's going to take up some time. But that is why I have not been running as well, because my balance is all off kilter. And yeah, being on the treadmill when I put it on like a 7, I don't want to go shooting off. Even though I am only in our storage room when I'm running on the treadmill, I'm not. There's nothing big that I could go shooting off into other than our old Christmas tree. Trying to think, my hammock is in there from when I'm not using it in the summer. There's nothing big that I would really hurt other than myself. But yeah, my balance has kind of been off ever since. So besides the headaches and the balance issues, I'm kind of giving it a week, and then I hope to be back in full force on Monday is kind of what I'm telling myself. So I think it's also, I was kind of getting a little burned out from the running. So I'm giving myself a mental and a physical break, and we'll get back at it on Monday, and we'll see what the future holds for Dopey 2022. So we're going to see if we're going to get back out there in January or not here soon. But I'm hoping to get down there, and we will see. But, I've told myself, if it's in the cards, it will be. I mean, I love running Dopey. I love running Marathon Weekend. It's my favorite weekend of the year. But if it's not in the cards, it's not in the cards. I'm not going to cry over spilled milk. Just I've had a couple of issues, and I've been very lucky in my running. I've never had really any kind of uh, nagging injuries. Never had any physical ailments. I've been very blessed in my running. It's just been get up, run, no problem. Everybody else has always had issues. I've been very lucky not to have those. And again, today's episode is about thankfulness, and it's about thankfulness for the little things, not necessarily for like a big lottery win, or driving a Hummer or some kind of a, great vehicle that I've always dreamed of having. And I still might have someday later in life. That'd be very cool. But it's the little things, and when I think about that, you can look at things two ways, and I'm trying to put things in perspective. Like with this kind of setback on running, I've had a lot of blessings. At first, and I'm a very kind of person that, um, and I've mentioned this on the podcast. I'm super competitive, and I don't like to ever let anybody down. So that's why I try not to ever miss a podcast. We hit 2,000 podcasts because I didn't ever want to miss a show, even if I was sick. Because there were a couple times where I had back problems, and this was early on. Just other issues, but we really never missed a podcast, and still haven't. Knock on wood. I never want to miss a podcast. I never want to miss a run. But I have learned that if you just kind of accept things, that there are blessings in even missing a run, because I've been able to sleep in for a few days, and I haven't done that honestly since about 2013. So that's been nice to be able to sleep in and have breakfast with my wife. Stay up a little bit later, not have to worry about going to bed so early because you're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning for your run. So I'm thankful for the blessings that you're not expecting coming out of not optimal situations. And so that's kind of nice. Also kind of on the other side of that with my wife's procedure this week is that, she can't drive for a week. So I've been driving her around, and that's such a blessing because we've got to spend more time together this week than we have, because she hasn't been teaching, and we've just got to have a great time. We've got to go to lunch at you would call it Panera, probably where you're from, unless you're from St. Louis. We call it St. Louis Bread Company. We hadn't done that in years since we used to teach together. Excuse me. But when we used to teach together, there was a bread company right by our school. And so sometimes on our plan period, we go up to bread company and grab a lunch on a PD on a professional development day. And we hadn't done that for years. And we got the soup and the salad kind of combo, and sat there and talked. And it was cool because it was like her first outing since her procedure. And it was a blessing, and it's a small thing that I'm super thankful that we got to do. Um, the 3 nights that we had to again sleep in the recliners because she couldn't lay down yet. While that's rough when you're 6'3" and trying to sleep in a sofa sitting up. Um, it was a blessing because, we got to sit there and talk and share stories, and that's what marriage is about. She always was always helping me when I had all my stuff going on with my kidney stone in May. And that happened over Mother's Day weekend, by the way. And the weekend that Paige graduated from her graduate program, which was terrible timing. But she took care of me with all that other stuff going on over Mother's Day weekend. She was taking care of me in the hospital, and she's always taking care of me. So I finally got a chance to help her out. So that made me feel better. So I'm just thankful that I actually get to help her. And, I'm thankful for that because she's very independent and doesn't ever need help. And so I was glad to help her there. But again, you got to be thankful for the little things. And we've had a really a week that we've got to giggle, we've got to laugh, we've got to spend some time together, and it's brought us closer. And I think that is I'm truly thankful for the time that we've got to spend together, just helping her get better. And she's getting way better. She's doing awesome. So if you're ever asking, she's doing great. And thankful for all the friends that have reached out and asked how she's doing and how we're doing, and everything's going great. So I just wanted to give everybody an update. I'm not running because I'm not hurt or anything. I'm just running because, again, Riley tripped me. I fell down the steps and hit my nugget, and I should be back by Monday, God willing. We'll see how it goes, and we'll be back out there, and hopefully we'll be out there towing the lines for Dopey. We'll see how that goes. But if we don't, we don't. So I've told myself I'm not going to put myself in a place where I'm going to have expectations one way or the other. It's either going to happen or it's not. And I want to run it, but if I can't, I'm not going to force it. So we'll see how it goes. All right. So today we're going to go over the feedback from last week's show, which I found super interesting because I brought up that topic of how I'm kind of jealous of folks that get to go back to their childhood homes, right? I listened to that podcast called You Don't Know Flack. It's about a guy who down in Oklahoma tells these awesome stories about growing up. He was a Commodore 64 guy like I was. We had similar backgrounds, but his dad still lives in his childhood home. So many times he talks about how he went over and spent some time with his dad, and he'll go into the attic or he'll go into the basement or he'll go into his room, the room that was his room as a child. And he still has like all of his old stuff, it's still there because he can still go there and he can go in his backyard that he grew up in where the fort was when he was a kid. And so I can't do that because, my parents divorced and they sold all the houses and my grandparents, passed away and we sold their house recently. And so I can't go back to these places that housed my memories of Christmas and Thanksgivings. And, I remember at my grandparents' house on a Thanksgiving. I remember, and if you're my age, you may remember this. I vividly remember watching on a Thanksgiving day that Cowboys football game where it snowed in Dallas. And we were all just watching it in my grandparents' living room. And I remember my grandpa had the walnuts. He had a big tray of walnuts with a nutcracker there, and he was eating them there in his chair. My grandpa had his chair, which actually I have my grandpa's chair here in my basement. That was my wedding gift. My wife talked to my grandmother. My grandpa had already passed away, but my wife talked to my grandmother right as we were getting married, and she got his recliner, and my wife got it reupholstered, and so that was my wedding gift. So I got my grandpa's recliner here in my basement, very special gift. But yeah, he would sit in his recliner and just eat these walnuts. And I remember he was eating them. We were watching that Cowboys game on a Thanksgiving, I believe it was, where it snowed. And it was like, oh, that was so cool that it snowed in Dallas and we were watching the Cowboys. And I was there with my cousins, but I can't go back there. That house, we had to sell it after my grandma passed. So I'm super jealous of folks that get to go back to those places. So we got some feedback on that. Jennifer Perry, thanks for being a patron. Happy Thanksgiving, Jennifer. She says, I'm fortunate that my mom still lives in the house where I grew up. It's only a few miles from where I live now, and I can go home anytime I want to. We moved there in 1977 when I was 3 years old. The room that eventually became my bedroom had a red, white, and blue shag carpet and 1776 themed curtains. Okay, because I told you my house when I was a little kid had 1776 like an eagle kind of logo wallpaper. It was gold though. It was like gold ovals. It was the craziest. I got to find a picture of that somewhere. That was definitely in style at the time. Of course, the entire house had been changed and redecorated several times over in the past 44 years. So it looks very different now than it did during my childhood. Christmas is different too, since my dad passed away in early 2020. I'm sorry for that. And my sister and her family moved to Arizona last summer. Even though I can still go home for Christmas, we won't be able to all be together this year. My focus has shifted to being with the family and friends who are here, no matter what we celebrate. I think that's it, right? It's about being with those you love. That's what I've learned. It's not about the physical place, even though I'm so nostalgic. God, I would give anything to go back to those places, but it's about the people you're with. But man, would I love to go back to grandma's. If I could go back to one place, it'd be grandma's house. That'd be so cool. Dennis Keithley, my good buddy down in Texas. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the crew, Dennis. Hey Mike, I just became one of those that can no longer go back home for the holidays. When I was in junior high, my parents moved us into a new house they lived up there until last year when it just became way too much house for the two retirees. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, I could not get back to St. Louis to see the house one last time before they moved, but I have plenty of pictures and great memories to sustain me. Sorry to hear about the return of the kidney stone. I hope it resolves itself soon and as painlessly as possible. Also, have a great Thanksgiving. Yes, we're working on that. And have a great Thanksgiving to you too, Dennis. Yeah, it is kind of sad when it goes away, but yeah, we are so lucky now that I think about Mallory, right? She's gonna have images of everything, like when she's older. We have so many pictures of this house. We've only lived in this house for 2 years, but she has so many videos and pictures of the house we grew up in her entire life until we moved here in July of 2019 at the old house, our old house in Florissant, Missouri, because we always had our, cell phones. We had iPhones back then. And the thing is, last Christmas, my dad, he gave me a great gift. He gave me a hard drive where he had scanned a bunch of like old snapshots that he found in a shoebox at his house. And that was a great gift because that's what I wanted. I'm a very nostalgic person. Like I've always wanted the snapshots. He actually has those old Super 8 video I guess they're like little movie films, they don't have sound. There's a projector you put them on, the reel to reel kind of thing, and it shows them like the old movie theaters. And like you would just, display them on a wall. He has a bunch of those, and I'm trying to get those somehow. But he gave me a bunch of pictures of like my grandparents when they were growing up, his fam, like my dad and his brother when they were growing up. So I have a ton of pictures on this hard drive, and it's some of my, growing up, my pictures with my sister, and those are timeless and they're great. But I, I mean, literally, Mallory probably has tens of thousands of pictures of her childhood, where I probably maybe have hundreds, maybe a thousand, probably hundreds. I would guess. I'm old. I'm old. That's the theme of the show. I'm old. Trisha Hellwig, happy Thanksgiving, Trisha. Hope you're doing well. She says, I've moved a fair amount, 9 to 10 times so far. I'm not that much of a nostalgic person when it comes to homes, probably from moving so much. Even though we moved a lot, we maintain traditions that are more important to me today. On the other hand, my husband's parents lived in the same house that they built. Yes, they actually built it, lived in the basement during the construction of the house over 30 years ago. My husband is far more nostalgic than I am, which drives me crazy at times because I would call it being a pack rat. Okay, Trisha just nailed it. That is the conversation that my wife and I have all the time. I want to hold on to things. Like I do, because like that is the thing that was there that can't be replaced, right? You can get another one or you can take a picture of it and you have a memory that's associated with it. But man, like when you have the actual thing, but I mean that does become dangerous because all of a sudden you can become a hoarder, right? Because you can try to collect everything and keep everything because, oh, that has a memory because of this and that has a memory because of that. You're right. There's a fine line there. And fortunately, my wife is very much she is not a hoarder. She's a very clean cut, we don't keep anything, cut type person. So I have very few things. I do remember that we went to the mall a couple of years ago, and there's a store there called what's it called? It's an old like oh, what's it? I can't remember the name of it, but it sells like old video games. It's called Vintage Stock. Vintage Stock. And they sell like old not Commodore games. They sell like old Atari cartridges and stuff like that. And I did buy like an old Pac-Man Atari cartridge, an old Space Invaders, and an old Asteroids Atari cartridge. I don't have an Atari 2600, but just to have the physical cartridge, I think they're like $5 each. I have them on a shelf, and it just brings me joy to look over on the shelf over there and see these Atari cartridges because they have the art on them. And I had those cartridges, and those were like the things when I was like 8, like those were gold. I mean, they're not I wish I had the ones that I had when I was a kid, but man, like if you had a Pac-Man cartridge when you were a kid for your Atari 2600, even though the game was terrible looking back on it, it was like you had the world. You had a Pac-Man machine in your house. You were, I mean, just to think back of like, 7 to 8 year old Mike, like that was joy. And so look at that cartridge. That brings me joy. And also my dad found, now this is one thing I'm never going to give up because he did find the actual item. Somehow he found, and this is only going to be for the geeks, he found my 1670 Commodore 64 modem that I ran my BBS on, my bulletin board system back in the day, my first bulletin board system. And it's the actual modem that I kind of got all the BBS running on in the first place, which kind of started me to all this whole, getting on the internet and this whole kind of even getting into the podcasting stuff. So it's a small little modem, which I'll have to take a picture of and I'll post it on Instagram this week. But yeah, that's on the shelf because it brings me lots of joy thinking back on my old BBS days. Christy Arthurs is here with a comment. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Christy. Hope you have a great one with your friends and family. I'm another one that doesn't have access to my childhood homes because we moved so much across the country twice and a few in-town moves. I'm not even sure which of the houses I'd be most nostalgic for. Like you, I grew up very close to my grandparents. Even when we moved, they came too. They were usually just a few streets away. Every day for several years, when we moved out west, instead of going home for lunch, I'd have lunch with grandma. Then I go back to school and we bake together. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Oh, then we go back after school and we bake together. So yeah, after school baking. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That is a grandma right there. That reminds me, my grandma. My grandma was always baking stuff, and I would always go over after school. I didn't bake with her, but I would sit there and while she always watched People's Court and she would watch Sale of the Century. Those two shows were on after school. and she would always be baking cookies or something, and I'd just sit there and just like, when she got done mixing up the cookie dough, I would just kinda eat the cookie dough, like, and then and by the way, I turned out okay, so I guess you can eat raw cookie dough without going crazy. Christy says, "Thanks for sharing your memories. Love the show and the main one, of course, but I enjoy the different ideas that come up in this one." Christy, thank you so much. I know this show isn't much. I do feel kind of terrible about this podcast a lot of times because I want it to be more, but I really want it to be authentic and I want it to be kind of behind the scenes of what we have here. And this is me. I mean, this is my Midwest. This is Mike in, in his basement. This is Mike in Missouri. I don't know. I just want to share with you guys because this is what it's all about. All right, the next I like this one. Next, you've heard of this guy, Mike Bankhead, my good buddy down in South Carolina, who's also recuperating, and I think he's doing very well. He's my brother down in South Carolina. He says, "Okay, confession time. Even though I've been a Patreon member since day one, but I haven't listened to the Midwest show. No disrespect, but really thought the shows were about speed skating. Just kidding, Mike. I'm like you, Mike, in that I have a bunch of podcasts that I download and almost never get through them all. Plus, I'm lazy and just let Apple Podcasts download them for me. Anyway, just listen to the last two Midwest shows, and boy, did they hit home. Uh, conflict with Run Disney event versus home. Check. Kidney stones. Check. Pausing my running for health. Check. Then you throw in about being able to go home. I fall in the blessed bunch and may have taken it for granted if not for the show. I live a half mile from my childhood home. My 87-year-old mom still lives there, and I walk in and out at will. I may skip a few days, but at least 3 or 4 times a week, I'm able to sit in rooms with so many memories in them, both good and bad, but memories none the same. I still have access to both of my grandparents' homes. I don't go in them, but both are owned by friends of mine. My wife, Leanne, is not afforded the same opportunity. Her parents' home her parents' home in a rural area about a half hour away is now in decay and disrepair. And on the backside of this, our daughter has built a home less than a quarter mile from us. Her soon to be 2-year old already keeps me very occupied. I am the Grandpa Rallman to these wonderful grandchildren. So whether our daughter realizes it or not, she walks into her childhood home 3 or 4 times a week. So thank you, Mike. Thank you. Thank you. Help count another one of the blessings I have received in this life. So many are right in front of me. Mike, thank you. I don't know what to say. I'm an emotional guy, but I truly believe that we're all kind of putting this together and we kind of cross paths for reasons that we don't know. And I know that the podcast it's a weird thing, podcasting in general. I know that a lot of people look at podcasting from a technical aspect and it just goes out there and nobody thinks about why, but I think about the kind of the bigger picture, like why, how, and all that. I'm not even making sense right now, but like, why did my podcast get to Mike Bankhead? Like, how did that happen? And how did my podcast get to you? You're listening right now. And how are we making these connections? And it's a blessing that we're all together like this, and that Mike can share this story. He's very lucky, but he doesn't take it for granted that he gets to go back and just be in the environment that he grew up in. And that is such a blessing. And I mean, I'm not bitter about it, but I just, it's one of those things that what I do is I go back now in my mind's eye, because the thing is that here's the thing that I think kind of get to the nuts and bolts of this whole thing is that if you had a really good childhood, which I did, I was so lucky to have, is that the memories are so thick. Like, no kidding. The memories are so thick that I can almost go back into my grandma's house without physically going back there. I mean, I can hear they didn't have a grandfather clock. They had a clock though that hung on the wall that did go, it had like a second hand at the bottom that swayed back and forth. And I can hear that. And I can see the curio cabinet. I can smell, they had a wood burning stove in the corner of the family room. I can smell that, how the living room smelled at Christmas. And it was just to put it, this sounds so stupid, but it smelled like love. Like you knew you were loved when you were at grandma's house and grandpa's house, and it was just awesome. So you don't have to, I'm learning something on this show. Oh my gosh, I'm just sitting here blabbing, but I've learned maybe I don't have to go back. Maybe I can just go back in my mind's eye, and that's good enough. All right, two more. Crystal says, Crystal Sosich, happy Thanksgiving to you, Crystal. Hope you're doing well. Mike, catching up on the shows, and I love this one. My husband, Matt, actually bought the family home we grew up in from his mom back in 2007 when we were still dating. He wanted to help his mom out, thinking he could sell it later on. Well, a wife and three kids later, he's still here with no plans of moving unless it's to Florida. we all we all have that Florida dream. We love our home and we live in a great little neighborhood. We're high school sweethearts, and I grew up just a couple blocks away. Our kids even attended the same elementary school we both went to. It's great being around people and places you know. Thanks for the great show. You know what? I'm so jealous of that. That is so cool that your kids go to the same elementary school that you went to, because think about, like, I bet you give them that all the time. Like, oh yeah, yeah, that classroom. Yeah, that's where this happened. That's where, oh my gosh, you'll never remember third grade, that Halloween party when I dressed up like Gene Simmons from Kiss. And who's Kiss? Who's Gene Simmons? Yeah. I mean that is nostalgia right there. And how cool is that you have the same house? That is awesome. I love hearing this stuff because I know this stuff happens, but to hear somebody I know that it happens for, that's awesome. That is so awesome. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And finally, Michelle Camber, my good friend down in South Florida. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And Sam, I believe Sam is still across the pond, but maybe she's back. I don't know. I know she's doing a little studying overseas, which is very cool because Paige did that too. Hey, Mike, finally caught up with the last few episodes and wanted to say good for you choosing to leave Walt Disney World early to be with your family. It's hard to enjoy yourself with a conflicted heart. As for the most recent episode, we always had Christmas Eve at my Nana and Pop Pop's growing up. The entire family, them, my parents, aunts, and uncles, moved to Florida in the early 70s, just after I was born. My grandparents built a house when they got here and lived in it until about 15 years ago. I have such fond memories of Christmas Eve there. Just recently, I looked up their house, along with a couple of other houses I lived in as a kid on realtor.com, and was able to see the inside from pictures posted while for sale a few years ago. It was surreal to see the houses I loved look totally different inside, yet still bring back feelings of nostalgia. Great topic. You know what? I always go and look on Google Earth, but you know what? I'm going to look on realtor.com at my childhood homes. I've never thought to look inside. I guess you can do that. I guess if they've been for sale at some point. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's why I love the show. We are a family because I didn't know you could do that, but I'm gonna definitely do that. All right, thank you for the great feedback. I appreciate you. Have any feedback for this show and any show, and I love the feedback, guys. This is the best part of the show for me, and I hope it is for you because we get this all in together. This is a community. This is a family. This is what it's all about. Just please take the time this week. Or not be our guest. It's patreon.com/be our guest podcast. Patreon.com/be our guest podcast. Leave a few words and we'll share that next week. Okay, I'm going to leave you because we're getting a little long here with one story that I told you that I would get to next week. And this is it. And it gets back to Christmas Eve in unexpected places and opportunities. And I told you how that there was a Christmas Eve that I wasn't expecting to have a great Christmas. It was going to be my first Christmas Eve where I was alone, and because of circumstances, my parents were divorced. They got divorced when I was in college, and so I had started teaching and things like that, and so traditions that had been very locked into our family had kind of started to go away. Grandpa had passed in 2001. He passed 1 week exactly after 9/11. So things were very much up in the air in my world, and this was the Christmas Eve of 2002. And the thing was, like, I didn't really know. I'm a big Christmas Eve person. I love the holidays. I love Christmas. I love Thanksgiving. So I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't have anywhere really. I kind of started panicking because I didn't think about it till kind of the last minute. Like, I really don't have anywhere to go for Christmas Eve. I'm just gonna kind of just chill out and just, I'm not kind of the person that can say, oh, I'm just gonna, play video games or something on Christmas Eve. But my co-teacher was like, oh, you can come over. Our family does a huge Christmas Eve. Come on over. We have a Christmas Eve, as long as you don't mind like a crazy family, come on over. You don't have to bring a gift or anything. Just come over, hang out with us. We have finger foods, all the kids, we have lots of grandkids that come over. I mean, she says it's nuts, but if you want to come over, come on over. And so this Christmas Eve, this is the Christmas Eve of 2002. it was super, super snowy. I mean, it like we got a lot of snow this Christmas Eve. Fortunately, I drove a Jeep Wrangler. So I was like, good to go. So I drove my Jeep Wrangler over, and this was about probably about 20 minutes from where I lived. It was in a we went to her parents' houses where they did again talk about nostalgia. We went over to her parents' house. That's where they did. She gave me the address where they did Christmas Eve. I met her there. Again, this was my co-teacher at Wedgwood, where I used to work. This is in my second year of teaching, and the thing was, it was hard to get there, even in my Jeep Wrangler with four-wheel drive, because it was that snowy. The roads had not been plowed very well. I ended up parking at her parents' house, and when I went out and looked, I was actually parked kind of in the middle of the street because you couldn't see the street because it wasn't plowed. Actually, I might have parked in the yard. It was not in a normal parking spot. I remember that because you couldn't see where the streets and the yard and all that was because there was so much snow. Anyway, we do go in there, and because, like, I knocked on the door and she came to the door and like, "Hey, I'm glad you made it," and I did bring some kind of a small gift, and, like, I remember that because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna get to do anything for Christmas Eve this year." Like, that was the feeling I had. I was, like, panicked, and then I got to the door, and the funny thing is that her parents lived in a place where, as a kid, I went there with my grandparents a lot. It's a place in St. Louis called Spanish Lake, and we went there to eat a lot with my grandparents. It was a great restaurant right by her parents' house where we were, called Panicello's. We went there all the time with my grandparents. They love this Italian restaurant. Just little, wasn't fancy, but it was this good Italian restaurant called Panicello's, and her parents lived right behind it. So I knew kind of where it was. Got there, went into the house, and I'll tell you what, this house was nuts. I mean, there were kids everywhere. To this day, I'm not kidding. Our family had a lot of gifts when we went to my grandparents because I had my cousins, my dad and my uncles and stuff. No comparison to what I walked into when I walked into, and this house was not big. This was, we're all kind of blue collar families around here, but we went into this house. It was a split level house, in this the regular kind of area of St. Louis, and I'm telling you what, beautiful Christmas tree and just gifts everywhere you went. I mean, it was crazy, and just kids everywhere, the grandkids, because at this time, Paige was, let's see, she was born in 96, so she was like 6 or 7, and there were, probably 4 or 5 other grandkids just running around and, all excited 'cause it's Christmas Eve, Santa's coming tomorrow, and they're opening gifts from, all their aunts and uncles and stuff. And there was, Christmas music playing, finger foods, and, Pam or, there's a big family there. I kinda gave it away. Yeah, this was Pam's family. Um, yeah, she saved, Christmas Eve. It was one of those things that, I it was we weren't dating or anything. She just, like, didn't wanna see me by myself on Christmas Eve and had me over, and, yeah, it was pretty cool because we got to hang out. We got to, just, spend Christmas Eve, and it was very cool to see a family that was that tight. And it was very much like my Christmases with my family, like, from 5 or 6 years prior. But the thing is, like, we didn't have any of the kind of the second generation. We didn't have any of the little kids anymore. So it's so cool to see Christmas Eve again with the little kids all excited and opening their gifts. And as soon as they open them, playing with them and, throwing the balls around the house. And, Pam's dad, he's a great guy. Yeah, hey, gonna break something, and all that, the Pam's got 4 sisters, and, they're all, don't break anything, don't run with the, high C and all that stuff. It was just, it was what Christmas Eve is. It's supposed to be, and it was awesome. I just remember that it was the best Christmas Eve ever. I mean, I've had awesome Christmas Eves with my family, but if you ask me, like, what was my best ever in my lifetime Christmas Eves, it was Christmas Eve 2002, the one that my wife saved. She wasn't my wife at the time, we weren't even dating. She just didn't want me to be by myself, and she invited me over, and we had a great Christmas Eve. It was just amazing. I mean, it was chaos. It was utter chaos. We ended up going across the street. Her aunt lived across the street, hung out with her cousins for a while across the street. They were having Christmas Eve over there. Another scene over there, it was a bunch of people opening gifts and having fun and music playing, Christmas songs. It was just, it was awesome. And it's so funny because you just don't know how things are gonna turn out, right? That could have been the worst Christmas Eve ever, 2002, right? It could have been, and I thought it was gonna be, and it was, look back 48 years later, it was the greatest Christmas Eve ever. So maybe you're, thinking you're gonna have a bad one this year. It could be your best one ever. So hang in there. It's gonna be good. And again, kind of it's Thanksgiving tomorrow. Be thankful for the little things. Be thankful for the obstacles that give you blessings on the other side. I talked about how Pam had a procedure. I was tore up. I was nervous. I was sick. I was really, really nervous about this. And I'm thankful that the doctor was awesome. Did a great job. And I got to talk to her before and after, and she was just, I told her, I was like, she's my whole world. Do a good job. Focus, please, please, please do your best. And she did. And she assured me she would. And she came out and said everything was perfect. And, Pam's doing great. And we got to spend all this time together. And, it's a blessing. And so, you don't know where the blessings are going to come from. And this podcast has brought me so many blessings. And let me tell you, you're one of them. You don't discount your support here on Patreon. It really does help us out because, we get to keep doing this show. And I always try to give the best effort I can every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know this show isn't much and this show is kind of cheesy. It is. I'm sorry, but I try to be more honest here that I can be. This is a personal kind of thing over here. I'm not as It's more business on the big show. This is kind of just us hanging out. So anyway, I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and that you have a chance to spend time with those you love, your friends, your family. You can reflect on those big, we have so many big things to be thankful for: our homes, that we have a great meal that we get to have tomorrow, that we have passions in our life, that we get to do, things that we dream about sometimes, not every day, but we get to do those things. But also kind of the little things that we get to do, sometimes when you got to stay home, or you don't get to run, that there's a blessing on the other side of that as well. So just reflect on those. And here's the thing. I would love it if you would drop by and just give feedback on the little things that you're thankful for, maybe that you wouldn't expect. Like I'm saying, kind of on the order of, I'm thankful that I got to sleep in a little bit because I didn't have to run. And I would like to be able to run, but because I can't run right now, I got to spend more time with my family, and that's a blessing, which I wouldn't have had on the other way. So please do give us some feedback for next week, patreon.com/beourguestpodcast. But more importantly, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. I'm so thankful for you and your support of everything we do, and I hope you have the best one ever. So until we talk again next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and have so much turkey and stuffing that you just can't get off the couch. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.